All right, guys, head of fighter operations for PFL Europe, one of the best commentators in the game and breakdown analyst as well. Incredible run in the UFC welterweight division. The one and only Dan Hardy is back. And a little rare layover at home, Dan, before you get back on the road for more PFL duties.
Yeah, pretty much a layover. Yeah, I'm here for. I've got a couple of days to do some laundry and to get packed, ready for the next trip. But yeah, off to Saudi Arabia this weekend, ready for the championship at the end of the week. It's gonna be another great week in Saudi Arabia. It's always a busy one.
You mentioned 16 fights, obviously some really big ones. What are a couple that you want people to sort of keep an eye out for, or a couple that you're most excited about?
Man, there's a few. I mean, we've got the card's broken up into three parts. We've got the undercard, which is a very strong undercard. There are a lot of Bellator fights on there. A couple of fights I would pick out on there. Mansour Barnaoui against Alfie Davis is a great fight. And then you've also got Jeremy Kennedy taking on Jesus Pinedo, which for my money will define one of the top featherweights in this bracket, ready for a title shot in 2025. And then, the PFL championships, everyone's really talking about Dakota Ditchever taking on Tyler Santos. People feel like that's really the first major test of Dakota's career so far, mainly because she's made it look so easy up until this point. And then main event, Brendan Loughnane trying to get his second season won and another $1 million. And then in the middle of all that, we've got the PFL MENA championships. Ali Taleb taking on Rashid Haziz is probably the pick of that card for me right now.
And what I love about Brendan, man, he's kind of one of those guys that's like, you know what? Screw the UFC. Like, he's one of those guys that's really made a career for himself outside of the UFC and financially as well, right? Like going for his second $1 million.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting story especially because he didn't win them back to back. He came back last year intending to win the title a second time around, and was stopped by Jesus Pinedo. And that was there was a real surprise last year because, we had Brendan as well as Bubba Jenkins and Chris Wade in the bracket, and people expected to see at least one of those three, if not two of them, in the championship. And then out of nowhere, we got Gabriel Braga and Jesus Pinedo just took the division by storm. So I kind of feel like Brendan came back into this year kind of feeling like he had to do it because, in his mind, I think he felt like he was the defending champion last year and it didn't go his way. So in his head, he lost the title and he feels like he needs to come back and win it once more before he moves on to the next stage of his career, which I would imagine is some kind of super fights division. But, we can't forget that Timur Hizriev is not a person that's, certainly not someone that's anyone else has beaten before and could potentially be, the toughest test of Brendan's career so far.
What about that Usman Nurmagomedov fight with Hughes announced for Bellator Jan 25th?
It, right?
Huh?
You love it, right?
That's not a bad little fight, is it?
It's another one of those. It's another one of those that kind of came out of left field. I mean, I know some people were expecting it, given the fact that he was matched up against AJ McKee, and it seemed AJ was on that trajectory to fight Usman for the title at some point in the near future. And, a lot of people were surprised about the Paul Hughes AJ McKee matchup. I mean, myself included. I was really concerned that it was a step too far for Paul Hughes at this stage. But he just, he rose to the occasion. He looked absolutely fantastic. And, he's called his spot. He's called his opportunity against Nurmagomedov. And you just can't deny this momentum that he's got. It goes a long way, as in the sport of mixed martial arts. Confidence, it allows people to take risks and try things that they maybe wouldn't if they were second guessing themselves. I just think Paul Hughes is in that place right now where we have to just stand back and watch him go and see how far he gets. Whether this streak takes him all the way to a world title or not. He needs to ride the crest of this wave, and then wherever he lands, he's still going to be, under 15 fights in his pro career. So there's lots of time left in his future.
I mean, Irish MMA fans are super passionate about their fighters. And of course, one of those people is a fighter in Conor McGregor, who I'm guessing will probably be there on the night. Are you prepared for the craziness of the Nurmagomedovs, kind of Conor McGregor clashing in this kind of storyline? I mean, it's going to be pretty insane, man. That's must-watch TV all on its own.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna feed a lot into the build up towards the fight. I mean, one thing I will say is that I think both of the camps will be far more well behaved this time around. I don't think the Nurmagomedov camp are very, very proud of themselves for what happened at that event. And Paul Hughes is not Conor McGregor, and I think even if he's trash talking, it comes from a very respectful, factual place. He's speaking his mind and telling you what he believes. It's not there's no attack in Paul Hughes's trash talking, if you would even call it that. So I would imagine this one will be a lot more respectful and yeah, probably veer away from some of the more controversial subjects, which may not escalate it quite to the level of the Khabib versus Conor fight. That was wild. I was at that one, but because I was doing radio commentary, I was up at the top of the arena overlooking the whole thing. And it was like you kind of saw people darting in from different corners and all kind of chaos happening at once. It was a very interesting picture, a perspective that I had. If I was quicker, I should have recorded it on my phone.
Dude, that was crazy. Yeah, we were all there. I think we spoke as well. Me and Casper interviewed you. You had the visor on. You were doing your whole like, hey, crazy weekend in Vegas look. But outside, they had like riot squads. There were fights outside of the arena. There were fights inside the arena. It was insane, man. It was absolutely wild. So, and by the way, I love it. We were talking beforehand. I love it when you do like the face-offs between some of the fighters, because that seems like a hectic place to be. Like, I see you like trying to keep these guys from hitting each other. I just hope you get called up to do it for this one. I would love to see it. Let's talk quickly about UFC 309, man. How's Veronica doing? I know it didn't go the way that she wanted to in Madison Square Garden. She put up a post recently. I feel like she was a little bit too hard on herself, man. Like, there was still a lot of positives to take away from the experience, right?
Yeah, of course, and that's what that's what we as the support network around her, the coaches and family, we need to focus on those things and keep reminding her of those. I mean, it's one of those unfortunate things. It's very different to being like soundly beaten, right? Like if someone beats you, if they're better than you on the night and you try your best, but you can't do anything about it, then, there's a level of acceptance that comes with that because it's unavoidable. Unless you want to lie to yourself, then you accept that you were beaten. But when the fight kind of slips through your fingers a little bit because you don't put your foot on the gas or you don't take the opportunities that were presented or even create the opportunities, that then very much feels like you let yourself down, and that can be really frustrating. And unfortunately, that's where she's at right now. And because everybody around her knows what she's capable of and what she could have done had she really put her foot on the gas. It's dealing with the frustration of not taking the opportunity in both hands, and that's an unfortunate situation that some of us have had in the past in our careers where it's just difficult sometimes to put the pieces together on the night for whatever reason, second guessing yourself, overestimating your opponent, underestimating how you would feel when you walk out in a place like Madison Square Garden, and you're representing all the people that have been supporting you all the way through your training camp. It's a very interesting process to be a fighter, and now to be a coach of a fighter, and he's with Veronica every day, watching her on this roller coaster. It's easy to look back at times in my career when I was going through the same emotions and try and liken it to that in some way to help. But she'll be back. It's one of those things that fuels her to be better. And it was a frustrating night for her because she knows she could have done better. And next time she won't let it get away from her, I don't think.
Yeah, but it's one of those things, right? It's like the experience of this night then feeds in, to future performances. And you almost sometimes need to, as unfortunate as it is, not show up one night to really sort of take that into future experiences and understand what that's like. I wonder for you what it's like, because there's this really great photo on Instagram. I wish I could find it. I might chuck it up here when I edit this interview, where you're just kind of like standing there watching her shadow box. And it's kind of like, it's this really cool photo of you and this relationship that you guys have. Obviously, you're together, but you're also her coach. That's got to be a pretty wild thing for you, right? Like, because you wanted to get better as a fighter, but then you're on the other side of things as well as a partner. And then what's that like? Like, it must be like a really wild and interesting experience for you. And especially like a part of you must want to just jump in there and, help her out, like it's because you're a fighter yourself, a successful fighter. What's that experience like for you? Like, it must be insane.
It's a new challenge. It's something that I've never experienced before. And, I've always been on one side of the line. I've always been, cornering teammates or coaching people and cornering them. And, the the emotion was always the same. Like, go out there and do everything you can to win. Like take the chances, take the risks, take the shots, open yourself up if you need to, if the fight's getting away from you, and at all costs get the victory. And whenever I was going away to an event, my mother always used to say to me, "I don't care whether you win, as long as you're all right." And I always used to say to her, "Yeah, but if I don't win, I won't be all right." And she kind of laughed, and now I get it, right? I get it. Like, she came out of the fight, she underperformed, she was angry at herself, she's been disappointed since the fight, and that disappointment will stick with her for a little while, I'm sure. But on one side, she gets out of the fight and she's like, she really could have done better, and and it's frustrating on that part. But on the other side, I'm like, well, she's all right, she's safe. Like, I get my mum's perspective as well now, you know what I mean? Because it's like, it's someone you care about incredibly. And it's not like I didn't care about my teammates, but we'd met in that environment where, like, that's what you do. We all do the same thing. We risk ourselves for glory and fame and money. Whereas with Veronica, she's my wife. I love her a lot. So, like, in a sense, I have to kind of balance the coaching her to be a fighter with that. And the only way I can do it really is to do it to the best of my ability, so she's as safe as she can be. Like, there's a lot of good coaches out there, but I don't think I trust anybody as much as I trust myself to coach her with the right intention, to take smart risks and do the right things. And I think that's an interesting balance. But then, in the last round of that fight, and I'm sure you could probably hear me, on the broadcast, I was shouting at her to, have confidence and take risks, which, obviously is a difficult, I'm not balancing it in that point. I'm thinking about her as a fighter and how she's going to feel the next day. And that's frustrating, because I know what that's like. You just want to hit the reset button and start the day over, but take that lesson with you. And you're like, man, just give me one more round. I would do everything just to punch him a few more times. But when that moment's got away from you, it can be very frustrating. So I remembered that in the moment, and I was trying to spur her on to attack.
Well, look, the great thing is, like you said, she's injury-free, so we're excited for the next one. And Veronica, don't worry, like, this is all a part of the journey. I got to also ask you, man, what did you make of Jon Jones and this whole him not wanting to fight Tom business leading into his fight with Stipe, the Alex Pereira, I'd rather fight Alex Pereira, Tom's an asshole thing? What did you make of that whole narrative playing out throughout fight week and then after the fight as well?
It was a weird fight week, just generally. I think a part of that, of course, was because Veronica was opening the card, but also because, Jon had been out for a long time, and of course, Stipe, and I'd talked about it a lot with the Ngannou Fajeda fight that we'd just had, so this fight was very much a part of the conversation that I'd been having for weeks. So there was a lot of anticipation, from myself around it and how it was going to play out. And then as the week played out, it was so odd to hear people say what they were saying, Jones saying the things that he was about Aspinall, and that just, I don't know. And this is entirely me speaking as a fan, but it kind of, I don't think it was good for his brand to say those things about Tom, because, like, what I want from a champion in any division, especially the heavyweight champ, I want to say any person, put them in front of me, I would destroy them. Because that's what we want the heavyweight champ to be. We want them to be this ultimate destroyer that is the scariest, most dominant person on the planet, right? And as soon as you hear that person say, I don't want to fight this guy, who is he? Is it worth my time? Is it worth me risking my legacy? That was very much a telling statement, I think. Hang on, let me fight this guy who was a middleweight, you know, a few months ago. I don't know. It just didn't seem like a good look to me. And even if somebody made the point, maybe Jon's negotiating publicly, he's trying to increase the value of the fight and force the UFC's hand to give him more money to accept it. But even if that's the case, I still don't think it worked out well for Jon to say those things, right? It's still, as the heavyweight champion, that's the energy that you want from that person. Like, they're not afraid of anybody. And I think with Jon being so doubtful about the idea of fighting Aspinall, who is the rightful #1 contender, you know, you can't deny that in any way, and you can't put anybody in that place above Tom Aspinall, you know, even. And this is another thing to consider as well, right? Like Alex Pereira, yeah, it would be an interesting fight. You've called out the next biggest person of interest on the UFC roster for the fans. It's the obvious call out. But from the UFC's perspective, Pereira is still a very young commodity, right? There's still a lot of growth and a lot of miles and a lot of pay-per-views in Alex Pereira as a brand. If you then bury him with Jon Jones's retirement fight, then you've effectively lost 2 big pay-per-view draws in the space of one event. And I just don't expect Pereira at this point in his career to be able to deal with Jon Jones's wrestling or size, you know? And that's another thing that you've got to look at from the UFC's perspective. It makes more sense for Pereira to lose the belt to someone like Ankalaev, who at least can come back and hit the rematch button, or can, you know, hold the belt and generate interest in another demographic. But sacrificing Pereira to Jones because that's what Jones asked for makes no sense to the promotion. And Jones really has to fight Tom Aspinall if he wants to continue to be the heavyweight champ, right? Like, there's no disrespect to Jon, but there's a difference between being the current heavyweight champion and being the greatest of all time. You can be the greatest of all time, but not be the current best, right? And I think that maybe is the circumstance with Jon. Like, there isn't a belt that represents who he is in the sport, but he's maybe not the best heavyweight on the planet right now. And that puts everybody in a difficult situation, including the UFC.
Mm. Did you ever run into him throughout fight week? Like, did he say anything to you about Ngannou or the PFL or anything like that?
No, I honestly, I literally just stay away from everything fight week, UFC hotel and everything as much as I can. I go there to check in and make sure that she's got the right gloves and fight kit, and then I just stay away from the event until fight night. It's, you know, it's just been easier that way for me to focus on what I'm doing, focus on, you know, Veronica and her opponent and all that. And, you know, we were in New York for a little while as well, so we had a cool spot that we'd got near Madison Square Garden, actually. So
cool.
I had a little spot that I was hanging out, and I've been comfortable there for a month, so I spent my time there instead. I didn't see Jon. The last time I saw him, it was actually in New York. I want to say it was the PFL playoffs at Madison Square Garden, but I can't remember exactly. But we saw her on a crosswalk next to the New Yorker, and we had a little sparring match, and we had a chat. He's a good dude. I like Jon. You know, we did a lot of signings back in the day with Zines. Me, Jon, and Frank Mir spent many hours standing at the booth wearing out Sharpies with each other. He's a lovely guy.
The good old days, man. Hey, because I was going to ask you, obviously, with the Francis Ngannou and Jon Jones fight, like, the UFC let that slip away. They didn't want to pay Francis the money he deserved. They didn't really want to pay Jon the money that he wanted. Do you think they learned from that experience and they put this Tom Aspinall, Jon Jones fight on? Do you think it happens? Or do you think it's one of those things where, hey, the UFC doesn't pay you a few money, you know? So that's just not going to come together.
I don't. It's interesting because, you know, I've seen the UFC in different perspectives through my career, and now I try and look at them, you know, very much from a promoter's perspective, and try and understand their thinking behind certain moves and matchmaking that they do. And honestly, I think at this point, it doesn't matter who it is. UFC brand comes first, right? Protect the promotion and protect the system that's in place at all costs. Mm-hmm. Like, if you cave for one of those people, whether it's Ngannou or Jon Jones or Conor McGregor or Brock Lesnar, whoever it is, if you cave for one of those superstars, a new precedent has been set. And what the UFC absolutely didn't want to do, which was obvious with the Francis Ngannou situation, is, you know, come to the table with an offer that the fighter would be willing to accept. And I just feel like, I mean, and I think Dana's comment at the press conference was quite telling about the situation. If Jon Jones wants to fight again, he'll fight Tom Aspinall. That's like, that was almost putting him in his place, is what it felt like to me. Which, is going to be interesting to see how Jon reacts to that, because I don't think he's certainly not going to take it very well. I mean, I don't think I would if I was him. If I was the pound for pound best, the heavyweight champ, and I've been put in my place by the promotion like that, I don't know. But that's the way that it's always operated, and I think that's the way that the UFC have maintained such a strong roster, and of course the competitive edge in the sport for so long. And I don't think that they would sacrifice that for anybody, not even Jon Jones.
Quick break to thank MANSCAPED and NORDVPN and SAILY for bringing you these programs here today. I want to talk about MANSCAPED first. What? Boom! The Chairman Pro Electric Foil Shaver is here. It is the game-changing tool that brings the luxury of a professional shave right into your home. Whether you're after that daily silky smooth finish or prefer to maintain a rugged 5 o'clock shadow, the Chairman Pro Electric Foil Shaver is your go-to for precision and style every time. Head over to manscaped.com and join over 11 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by using the code word submission for 20% off and free shipping now. And what makes the Chairman Pro so special? Well, what about the Skin Safe blade heads? Skin Safe full blade foil for that close, smooth shave when you're looking to go completely clean. And clean shave isn't your style? That's okay. Just switch to the Skin Safe stubble trimmer to keep your stubble looking sharp and polished. Both heads are designed with the Skin Safe technology to help reduce razor burn and irritation, so your skin feels smooth and comfortable after every single shave. Go to Manscaped right now and use the code word submission. You can use it across the whole website. The Chairman Pro, you can get the Lawnmower 5.0, what about the Beard Hedger, all sorts of great products, 20% off, and you're helping the program, and you get free shipping. That's at Manscaped right now. I also want to welcome SAILY to Submission Radio. What is SAILY? This thing is an absolute game changer. It is a new eSIM service app brought to you by Nord Security, where you can choose several affordable eSIM plans over 160 countries and 8 regions. With SAILY eSIM, you'll always have a connection when needed. If you've ever been lost abroad or badly needed an internet connection with no Wi-Fi spot in sight, you'll understand what a difference a local SIM card can make. An eSIM provides the internet connection wherever you travel and saves you money on roaming fees. All you got to do is have a look at this. You just download the app. Here I am here. I want to travel to Thailand, so I choose that, and boom, it's that simple. All you guys got to do is download the app, go through the prompts, and you guys are sorted. Global and regional plans. You save time. You don't have to wait in line at airports to get a local SIM card. You stay connected. No more wandering around looking for public Wi-Fi. All SAILY eSIM plans are compatible for iOS and Android devices. So what are you waiting for? Download the SAILY app now. Use the code submission, or click the link in the description, SAILY.com/submission, to get an exclusive 15% off and travel in style with SAILY this festive season. And by the way, guys, while you're traveling in style, why not jump on NordVPN as well? There's exclusive deals right now for Black Friday for all Submission Radio listeners, where you get massive savings plus 4 months extra. That's 4 months extra, and you get that 30-day money-back guarantee. So why not try it today and see the NordVPN difference? And don't forget, you can use one NordVPN account across 10 devices with one single VPN subscription. Don't forget, you can get cheaper prices on things like pay-per-views, airlines, product, all sorts of things, online subscriptions. NordVPN has you covered. Jump on today and go to NordVPN/submission, or click the link in the description below. Get that big saving 4-month extra for free thanks to the Black Friday exclusive deal, and jump on now before it's gone. That's NordVPN.com. And now back to the program. I feel like, though, if you were the champion, you would be definitely defending your belt against the interim champion rather than fighting some guy at middleweight who hasn't fought at heavyweight. If that was you in that situation, Dan, I know you love to fight the best of the best. Let me ask you this. Tom Aspinall said he felt like Jon Jones was a little bit slow in there. What did you take from the Jon Jones Stipe performance? I was having a little bit of a chat with Brian Campbell yesterday, and obviously we got to diminish Stipe, who still went out there and did his best. But it was interesting to see the fact that Stipe was able to close the distance on a number of occasions with a limited amount of footwork and an inability to move. And I guess that Tom Aspinall comments were interesting. He did say that being there cage side and watching Jon live did a lot for him in a potential fight.
Yeah, it certainly makes people feel more real when you see them fight in person. I remember that from watching potential opponents on video and then seeing them fight live. I used to try and get to as many events as I could because it does feel very different when you're there. And I'll be honest, Jon looked a bit better than I thought it would. Whether he was punking us a little bit, but the training videos that he was putting out where he was hitting pads and stuff, he just didn't look very good. He looked kind of slow and sluggish to me. I was expecting him to look a little bit like that. It was encouraging that he came in lighter than he did against Ciryl Gane, because I don't think any of the weight that he had in that first fight at heavyweight was quality weight compared to how he looked against Stipe. I think he came in 8 pounds lighter or something.
Yeah, 237, I believe. Yeah.
Say that again. Sorry.
I think it was about 237. He looked much better that way.
Yeah, he did. He just looked like he'd done the additional work. I don't know whether there was a responsibility in his head to look more like a heavyweight in his debut, but certainly he looked better this time around. But I also thought Stipe didn't look in fantastic shape. Yeah, of course, he looked slower and. He's going to. I mean, he's been torched a couple of times, and he's 42, and he doesn't look like he moves well generally. Even on the countdown show, moving around his house, he didn't look like he was moving particularly well. And then one other thing as well that I'll be honest, I recorded. I had 3 or 4 attempts at recording a war room for the event, but I just never liked it, so I never posted it up.
No way. Why?
Yeah,
what happened?
I don't know.
Why?
I don't know. I just kind of. I don't know. I'm going to get back on the analyses next year.
You got it, dude.
I did record it. I started watching it back. I'm like, I can't put it out.
Was it like you just couldn't? Did you just kind of not see a couple of the sequences you really wanted to get into, or you weren't feeling something about that fight that you just couldn't get that right read on it that you usually do? Like, what was it?
No, honestly, I just didn't like the flow of it, the sound of it. I mean, there were so many pieces to it. I'm sure they're upstairs. I've got my notes somewhere for it. I mean, if I'd have posted it up, it would have been probably an hour long. And there was a lot of tangents in there. And one of the interesting things I looked at was Stipe's weight, because there's a difference in, and I remember this from the start of training camp, right? There's a difference in me. Going out for a run when I'm 185 pounds and when I'm 195 pounds. That's a 10-pound difference on my frame as a welterweight. If I'm Jon Jones going from 205, probably walking around at 225, 230, maybe a bit heavier, to then performing in that vehicle is a very different thing, right? And the Ciryl Gane fight was so quick that we didn't really get to see Jon as a heavyweight. Like Jon as a light heavyweight could have done that to Ciryl Gane, We didn't really get to see him drive the heavyweight version of himself. And my question was, if Stipe is able to survive the early couple of rounds, is there a point where Jon Jones then starts to move differently or feel sluggish? And with the training videos that I was seeing, he already looked kind of slow and sluggish to me at this weight. So then I looked at Stipe's weight, and when he made his debut, it was 2011. He was 236 pounds. And when he fought Ngannou, which was obviously the fight before Jones, he was 238 pounds. So in the span of over a decade, he'd fluctuated by about 10 pounds. It was amazing. Like he'd gone slightly up and then down, and then slightly up and then down, and he'd gone from being 236 when he made his debut to slightly lighter when he fought Ngannou at 234, but he never got higher than 246, and he was 248, wasn't he? And I watched the fight back again today, and that extra weight on Stipe it's not quality weight. You can see it. No disrespect, Stipe, I've got plenty of it myself, but you could see it over the top of his shorts, right? Like that wasn't the most elite version of Stipe that we're going to get, and he still caught Jones with a few shots, and not shots that he would have probably been able to withstand from, a 38-year-old Stipe or a Francis Ngannou or maybe even a Tom Aspinall, right? I think Jones was forgiven a few times in the fight by the fact that he was up against an older, slower Stipe as well.
Yeah, it kind of looked like he had some kind of hip issue that he didn't want to let on. I saw like at an event not long ago, remember he could kind of barely walk, and we were talking a little bit about it with like Beneil Dariush on the live watch along, and then afterwards on the post show with Brett Okamoto. It was almost like a little bit like he was in a situation where, you know, he had this huge check and he wasn't going to be able to say no to it because it's a great opportunity for his family. And you saw after the fight, he was basically, it almost felt like he was done with the fight game before that fight. But it just like, how could you say no to like an extra $4-5 million for your family? Like, the guy's an absolute legend and an American hero, like a firefighter. So I kind of felt for him. He was kind of held hostage. It almost felt like he was like, dude, I got to do this fight. I don't really want to do this fight. And I felt bad for him throughout the fight when Jon Jones was saying stuff about how he said something about his kids. And it's like, come on, man, leave the guy alone. God damn it. But let me ask you this. Yeah.
No, I agree. I was just.
And then he's like, when I was throwing the elbows, I was thinking about Stipe's comments about my kids. I'm like, dude, the guy's literally like a firefighter. And like, he's a hero. He doesn't even need to be doing this right now. He doesn't say anything about anything. I've interviewed him 100 times. Like, what are you on about?
The other thing as well, and they played it a few times during fight week, and I don't really think it helped too much with the promotion, but it was Jon Jones calling Stipe out. And it was like, it wasn't even a call out. It was like to the crowd. It's like, hey, everybody, do you want to watch me beat up Stipe? And like, poor Stipe sitting front row with his wife. And it's just like, he didn't get up. He didn't really respond. It was like, he just kind of went a little pale and like nodded like, okay, this is going to be the last dance. And I don't know, it just kind of, and going back to Stipe as well, like, he was the main event of my last fight, which seems like a long time ago now. But Stipe was 9-1 at that time, right? So he was 10 fights into his pro career. He's had most of his career since my last fight. And we're pretty much the same age. Like, I think I'm 3 months older than him. So like, he's taken that heavyweight wear and tear, training camps and fights in a later age than I have, from guys that can hit a lot harder than my opponents did. That was something else that occurred to me as well. And these were some of the things that I didn't really want to say before the fight, something that I didn't really want to put out in the war room, because it felt like I was maybe picking a little bit on Stipe, but honestly, it felt a bit like I was picking on both of them. It was an odd fight. Like, it was certainly not, the heavyweight spectacle that everybody wanted for a heavyweight championship. It was what needed to happen to beckon in the new era at heavyweight for the UFC. And that's why Jon Jones needs to fight Tom Aspinall, because from the UFC's perspective, the only way of making Tom Aspinall a star is if he beats Jon Jones live on pay-per-view.
Yeah, and I feel like Stipe got a little bit hard done by. It's like, all right, guys, I'm done. No package, no thank you, Stipe. No like, hey, man, you did all this great stuff. It was kind of like he was in the back of Madison Square Garden trying to catch a cab because no one was even, you know what I mean? Like, all right, Stipe, we're done with you now. Thanks so much, buddy.
They were like, no. They were like, delete the package. We might need to bring him back to fight Tom Aspinall if Jon Jones retires.
Yeah, he rolls in. Let me ask you just quickly as we wrap up, man. Tom Aspinall, Jon Jones. We saw another little performance from Jon Jones at heavyweight. Still a lot of questions to be answered, but early pick here. If you had to lean towards one fighter, who do you think gets it done at heavyweight? In a Tom Aspinall, Jon Jones fight.
Man, I mean, I've got to say Tom Aspinall at this point, and for a variety of different reasons. And I'll be honest, if Jon was talking confidently about it, like, all right, yeah, he's the next contender, let's go, my perspective may be very different. But because Jon has kind of undermined his own confidence a little bit in the way that he's been talking about Tom, I think he's done this. He's built Tom Aspinall's confidence up. And honestly, I think the only way that Jones would really be able to hold Aspinall off, both speed and power, would be with some kind of respectful intimidation, right? Where Tom is like there was a sparring clip with him against Rico Verhoeven, and you could see how respectful Tom was in that, right? I mean, of course, Tom's not going to go flying at him and try and knock him out, and there was no grappling involved, but like, Tom was certainly way more respectful of the opponent that he was up against. But I don't know if he's going to do that with Jon now, especially now he feels like Jon's ducking him. Even if that's not the case, which of course, none of us really know because we're not inside Jon's head. But if that's what it manifests as in Tom Aspinall's head, then that's going to build his confidence. And then, that's going to allow him to put his foot on the gas against Jon. And one thing I will say before we leave that, Jon looked really good this time around at heavyweight, but he was still within cutting distance at light heavyweight. Tom Aspinall looked incredible shape, and he was 150 something, 154. Like, he's a legit heavyweight, just like Francis Ngannou is. It's a very, very different thing to get hit by one of those guys. I can't even imagine And Jones at this point in his career may not be the most physically able to deal with that kind of force and power that either Tom Aspinall or Ngannou would generate.
Yeah, like Aspinall would land on Tom. I mean, Aspinall would land on Jon, and Jon would have to wear some of those shots. I mean, I don't think we saw Stipe close that distance. Let me just quickly ask you this though. People are saying an issue for Tom is that he hasn't been to the later rounds. Do you think that's an issue? Chael Sonnen came on and told me, hey, I think that's a problem. I don't quite know. What do you think? Do you think that late round experience is something that could be an issue for Tom?
I mean, honestly, we don't know, do we? Because we've not had the opportunity to see it yet. In my heart, I don't think so. No, for a variety of different reasons. One is that Tom's not an oversized heavyweight. He's in proportion. Like, you look at the size of his hands and his feet and his head, like he's meant to be a heavyweight. So everything about him is bigger, including all of his internal organs, right? He functions, he operates in a bigger machine. That's the difference between, a real heavyweight and someone that's moved up to heavyweight as well. There's the frame of Tom Aspinall is natural. He's always been massive. Even when he was a teenager, he was big. So like that's one thing that I feel like Tom's grown into this frame, into this body, training himself as an athlete since he was a kid. So I don't really question his conditioning, to be honest. And then the other thing I'll say is, if you look at the team he's put together, right? Follow Tom Aspinall, follow Aspinall BJJ on Instagram, and you'll see this group of monsters that they've put together. And there's a bunch of big guys there. Like, he's doing rounds and rounds with heavyweights, and that that is something that brings a tremendous amount of actual real fight conditioning when you're dealing with guys that are a similar size to you, which is a difficult thing to do with a lot of heavyweights. That's why they often flock to Vegas, so they're all in one spot. It can be difficult to find big people to push you. I remember that being a problem for Frank Mir back in the day as well. And I think that's something else that Tom has got in his back pocket that's bolstered him. Great training partners like Phil DeFries and stuff, people that will really push him.
Yeah, it's interesting because people go, well, the wrestling with Jon Jones, but I also go, well, Aspinall is a dangerous grappler, right? Like, he's always going for a finish. Do you think people are kind of underestimating Aspinall's grappling a little bit here? Like, you don't really want to hit the ground that much with Aspinall. Like, he's no like, hey, let me just lay here and let Jon sit on top of me type of grappler.
No, I don't think so. Absolutely. I mean, the other thing as well, which is a benefit, is that he's been training since he was a little kid. So he's not, as he's grown into the body that he's in now and he's become a heavyweight, he didn't always have that physical strength where he could overpower everybody when he was learning these techniques. I mean, if you look at Tom Aspinall's dad compared to him, you wouldn't think at any point he would have been any use as a training partner. But if you bear in mind, Tom was training on the mats when he was, 7, 8, 9, 10. His dad would have been the perfect training partner for him the whole time. And his dad has basically built this grappling game into him with mixed martial arts in mind. He's been working his striking as well since he was young. So I don't know. I feel like Tom he's well-rounded enough for him not to really worry about anywhere the fight goes against Jones. The challenge really would be the unpredictability and the creativity of Jones, right? Like, you can learn all the jiu-jitsu and judo and Muay Thai and everything that you need. But when Jones starts stepping in around your guard with big elbows and stuff, and you've not been training with someone that can do that, that's really where he can catch you by surprise. All the shoulder wrenches that he was doing against Gustafsson and Teixeira. Like, they're the anomalies, they're the X factors that Tom would have to be really watching out for. But generally, as far as technique goes, I feel like wherever the fight goes, Tom would be at least competitive.
All right, before we wrap, we've got a couple of fan questions. First one here from Damien. What are your thoughts on the Colby Covington versus Buckley fight, Dan? It's an interesting one. I tried to reach out to Colby. I haven't had a chance to set up an interview with him yet, but it was kind of out of the blue. Him and Buckley, great fight. What do you think of this? Buckley's looked super impressive against Wonderboy. Who do you think wins this one?
I think that this one's going to be. I think the build-up's going to be way more interesting than the fight. Let me put it that way. Like, I think there's a lot of risk here for Covington taking this fight, and quite clearly Buckley could knock him out with either hand, right, or either foot for that matter. there's a lot of jeopardy here for Covington, which means that he's going to do the best, safest thing to get past this and then move on to calling out, Ian Garry for ducking him or whatever will get him close enough to a title shot. I don't know. I feel like Buckley's too explosive. He's too bouncy, too plyometric. And they're the kind of things that give up easy takedowns for someone like Covington, right? Even if Buckley is able to keep getting back to his feet, whether it's with technique or strength, Covington might be able to keep returning into the mat. And if he can't return into the mat, he can hold him up against the fence. I just feel like Covington is going to turn this into a 3-round wrestling match. And Buckley's going to get frustrated. He's going to be looking at the ref. He's going to be looking at the screens. He's going to be arms in the air. And Covington's not going to give an absolute damn because he just needs to get the win and get past him.
Do you think that with 310 now having Shavkat and Ian Garry, first of all, it's a great fight, both undefeated guys. But do you think this, if Garry wins here, do you think this can kind of turn some of the perception from fans around him a little bit around? Or because he's at the moment in this weird place where people aren't that big on him, and because of various things that have happened and throughout his camp and personal life and stuff. Do you think this could be the big turning point for him? And also, do you think he can beat Shavkat? Because I saw a bunch of training footage come out between the two, and Shavkat looked pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be a very evenly matched fight, to be honest. I mean, physically they're very, very similar. Height and reach. I've not looked at the stats, but I would imagine Ian Garry's got a slightly longer reach. But they've both got that kind of picking style from the outside where they use that reach and speed, and their fight IQ applied to a very directed skill set to just kind of break their opponent down until there's an opportunity to find the finish if it comes. And obviously, Shavkat, I feel, has got more finishing capability at this level than Ian Garry. But, I think the animosity that's developed between Covington and pretty much everybody in the division, that's a ticket in Covington's back pocket that is going to tee him up for a title shot or an interim title shot or something, right? There's similar to the heavyweight division, really. There's a lot of new faces at welterweight that need the validation of a Colby Covington or someone like that. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Usman back in there as well, fighting one of these guys at some point.
Apparently Usman and JDM, maybe for Perth, 312. Okay. They don't have any fights.
So we see. That wouldn't surprise me either.
Covington won at JDM. I don't know if you saw this. He said he won at JDM. Yeah, which I was like, wow, that's a fight right there. But
interesting. See, I feel like I actually got asked this question at a boxing event the other day. Who's got the best boxing in MMA right now? And the first person that came to mind is Della Maddalena. I really think he's boxing as a boxer. He's very quiet. He's very slick. He's got good head movement. He reads the pocket very well, puts his head in safe positions. And, obviously some of that is based on the fact that he's been in there a lot. And you can tell that by his nose. He's had a couple of close range fights before. But I feel like his boxing is very sharp for MMA. I enjoy watching him. That's an interesting one. I feel like, there's a lot of new fans in the sport. And those new fans are interested in the Ian Garrys and and the Shavkats and stuff. But then there are the older fans that remember GSP and Daniel Cormier and the guys who are not active anymore. And sometimes they need to bring one of those older guys out to validate the new generation. Like it was the same reason why they had to get Stipe to fight Jon Jones and to bring Covington in to fight someone like an Ian Garry for an interim title or a title shot would make a lot of sense, because they would use the notoriety of Covington to generate interest in Ian Garry. I feel like the Joaquin Buckley fight from a Covington perspective is like, he's big and he's explosive and he's fast, and if he hits me, it's going to hurt. However, I'm going to see him every time he moves because he makes big gestures and he telegraphs everything that he does. He's physically loud as well as being audibly loud. Joaquin Buckley. That was something that I remember from Fight Island. No matter where you were in the hotel, you knew which direction Buckley was in because you could hear him. And you see that in his fighting style as well. Everything's got a big movement to it, and it just gives away opportunities for people like Covington to close distance and grab a hold of him. And I'm looking at that from a Covington perspective. That's the way I would be reading it if I was him.
Yeah, good on Covington, man. He's getting back in there. At least it's good to see him back in the mix. All right, final question here. Where is this question? Why isn't it popping it up? Okay, let me see if I can find it.
That looked like it said to me, would it?
Here we go.
Here
Yeah,
we go.
last question. Would you rather a Wonder Boy MMA skill set or a Kron Gracie? Interesting question from the MMA discussion. What do you think, Dan? If you could only step away with one skill set, which one would it be? Two very different ones.
Yeah, I don't know, to be honest. That's a difficult one. You see, of course, Wonder Boy's striking at a very elite level is impressive, but then he's always had that deficit, which I had in my game, which is, get taken down and out grappled. It could be a problem. But then on the other side, Kron Gracie's, I don't know. He fights face first, doesn't he? I like my memories of Kron Gracie in MMA was not as much jiu-jitsu as it was brawling. So I don't, I don't know. I think I would take Wonder Boys and add a few more striking skills to my my arsenal, and some dance moves. I mean, we've all seen the clip of him and Usman dancing. That was moves.
Also looking like you're 18 for your whole life. The guy's like in his 40s. I'm like, how's this guy in his 40s, man? This is craziness.
How does he do that?
How does he do that? I don't know. He must be drinking someone's blood. All right, man. Make sure to follow Dan Hardy on his journey back to the PFL. Can't wait to see the event, man, of course. And can't wait to see Veronica come back. And thanks so much for joining me, man. I want to see those war rooms in 2025, though. Everyone's been asking for them. So we got to see them. Dan Hardy, thank you so much.
Thank you, my friend. Always good talking to you.